Tantor Audio presents Masters of Seduction by Laura Adrian, Donna Grant, Laura Wright, and Alexandra Ivy. Narrated by Arika Rapson. Merciless, House of Gravori by Laura Adrian. Chapter 1. A gust of hot wind and fine rust-colored sand twisted like a dervish in front of Devlin Gravori's hard-set face as the hatch of his private jet opened and he prepared to disembark from the long flight. When he'd awoken that morning, he could not have guessed that before day's end he would find himself hours away from his island citadel in the Adriatic Sea, arriving at this small desert airport in a forbidding corner of the Middle East that had once, long, long ago, been known as Mesopotamia. Then again, when he'd begun his day, Dev had no idea that his brother had been killed. The shock of it, the piercing grief, clung to him as it had the first moment he'd learned the news. Golden, charming Marius, dead. Murdered. Dev's fists clenched as the memory of what he saw earlier that day filled his vision. Marius and a human woman, both nude, sprawled together in tangled white sheets that were soaked with sweat and semen and a terrible pool of their combined blood. The woman had been stabbed through the heart, a certain instant death for any mortal. Marius would have been harder to kill. Just shy of 400 years old, he had been younger than Dev by several centuries, but no less formidable. They were Incubi, a demon race that fed on sexual energy and had existed for as long as heaven and hell had been at war over the souls of mankind. Devlin and his brothers of the House of Gravori, and every incubus in the 9 other houses of their race as well, were something ancient and dark, close to immortal. There were few ways to slay one of their kind, and fewer individuals who would dare. Whoever had sliced open Marius's throat in the midst of his sexual feeding last night had been aware of one of the surest methods. If Dev had to guess, the slayer had taken advantage of Marius at his weakest moment, attacking from behind as the incubus was having his carnal fill of his thrall. The human female had been slain with equal stealth and precision, no doubt while Marius was bleeding out. His big body slumped across her from the waist down. The woman had been pinned beneath his dead weight on the bed. A deep puncture wound had gaped at her breast, her fair skin sticky and dark with her life's blood. The killings had been expert, and nothing if not thorough. Except for one telling flaw. Dev carried that evidence on him now, to an unannounced confrontation on what had forever been sacred neutral ground. Scraping a hand over his short black hair, he headed down the Gulfstream G650's stairs in his charcoal gray, custom-tailored Italian suit and gleaming leather shoes. He hadn't bothered to change into more appropriate attire for this meeting. If the trappings of the outside world offended, Dev didn't give a damn. He'd been called directly from his corporate office to the crime scene that morning, then had been en route to this swath of arid, heat-choked land within the hour. Ironic that the lofty audience he sought now should be hidden in a place as hellish as this. He muttered a curse. Nasty words, spoken in the ancient language of his demon ancestors.
"It's not too late to turn back, Dev."
The calm, deep voice belonged to Ramiel, the captain of the House of Gravori's watchmen. The dark-haired bodyguard deplaned along with Dev, dressed in black pants and a fitted black t-shirt that clung to his broad chest and massive biceps. Elaborate tattoos declaring Ram's house affiliation and profession wrapped the Incubus Guardian's forearms. Ram shared Dev's bloodline, a distant cousin, but as loyal as any brother. And the watchman was cool-headed and steady, where Gravori's master was apt to strike hard and without warning at the first sign of attack. Like the scorpion that had been the sigil of the Gravoris for eons, Dev's wrath was swift, blinding, utterly merciless. It had earned him the nickname Devil Gravori, a reputation that followed him in both his business dealings and in all other areas of his life. Today, he was prepared to demonstrate the full force of that reputation in one of the most hallowed courts of the immortal realm.
"You don't have to do this,"
Ram went on.
"Not like this."
"The hell I don't," Dev snarled. The sight of Marius's killing was still raw in his mind. Every detail would be burned into his memory forever. Grief raked him, but it was fury that had put him on the plane and sent him here with a thirst for vengeance. In the chest pocket of his suit coat, the errant object Dev had retrieved from beneath his brother's body felt like ice resting over his heart.
"No one crosses the house of Gravori with impunity. Not even them."
He stared forward, refusing to slow his pace, let alone reconsider where he was heading. Ramiel grimly strode alongside him, across the sun-baked dirt tarmac, where a local driver and an off-road SUV waited. The vehicle had been hired to take them deeper into the desert, toward a ridge of jagged, haze-shrouded mountains that loomed like a dragon's spine in the sweltering distance. The driver wouldn't be able to deliver them the entire way. The place Dev needed to go would not be found on any map or road or shepherd's path. For the last leg of his journey, to enter the neutral ground of the Nephilim court, Dev would need to rely on demon magic to transport him. And hope to hell that same demon magic would get him out again when it was over. When they reached the idling SUV, Ram paused. The watchman's face was grave, filled with dread and doubt.
"Confronting the three simply isn't done, Dev. You know that. They are the balance. They have the power to enforce Nephilim law. They have the ear of the Sovereign as well."
"The Sovereign," Dev grunted. "It's been more than 500 years since the Council awarded the Obsidian Throne to the House of Mirakel. Since then, things between the Nephilim and the other Incubi houses have been anything but balanced. If you ask me, we'd all be better off if we cleared the decks and started over, beginning with the Incubus seated on the throne." Ram exhaled an oath, low under his breath.
"For fuck's sake, Dev. First you fly out here determined to demand an audience with the most powerful Nephilim in the realm, and now you stand here talking about treason."
Dev shrugged.
"Change is coming, just not soon enough for my liking. The three are due to step down in a handful of years, and if Mirakel does not produce an Incubus heir before long, his house will die out the same way Akana's did."
Ram gave him a dubious look.
"Yes, and in the meantime, the three can, and will, do whatever they please, all in the name of peace. If you won't listen to reason, then at least let me stand with you in front of them today. As captain of Gravori's watchmen, I'm sworn by blood and steel to ensure your neck stays intact."
"They wouldn't dare," Dev assured him. Ram's answering gaze was sober.
"Tell that to Marius."
Dev didn't appreciate the reminder, even though the warning wasn't without merit. But he wasn't about to let anyone stand between him and the trio of Nephilim priestesses whose hands, he was certain, were somehow stained with his brother's blood. Ram may have pledged his life to Devlin as the master of the House of Gravori, but Dev's presence here was personal. And if it turned into a battle, he'd be damned before he let anyone else fight it for him.
"There are worse things than death," Ram murmured. "Prison and torture in the oubliette, for one."
Although the watchman was right about that, Dev dismissed the thought of the infamous supernatural prison with a hissed curse.
"I can't let Marius's death go unchallenged, Ram," he said, his tone permitting no further argument. "Someone needs to answer for my brother's slaying. Someone needs to pay, blood for blood."
Dev's hand came up to the place where the proof of his suspicion rested, cold against his heart.
"I won't leave here without collecting on this debt."
Chapter 2. The audience with the three was about to end in tears and disappointment. Nahiri knew it, even before the Nephilim mother's chin began to quiver with emotion. The woman was on her knees in a reverent pose, her demure daughter beside her at the base of the broad marble stairs that led up to the elevated platform at the head of the temple's high chamber. At the top of the 8 polished marble steps, seated behind a tall screen crafted of pierced sandalwood painted with gleaming gold leaf, the trio of Nephilim priestesses presided, unseen, over the temple and all within it. Nahiri stood at the bottom right of the stairs. Like the mother and daughter seeking counsel, Nahiri was clothed especially for this chamber sanctuary, in an undyed linen tunic and pants, simple calfskin sandals on her feet. But strapped crisscross from shoulder to waist on both sides of her body were the woven leather sheaths that held the weapons of her station. Nahiri was a blade. More specifically, she was a temple blade, one of less than a dozen Nephilim warriors responsible for guarding the high chamber and protecting the three. Not that anyone had ever dreamed of doing them harm. To Nahiri and the other temple blades, to all Nephilim in fact, the exalted three, being half human, half angel, were practically deities in their own right. For nearly 300 years, they had occupied this temple as supreme sacred advisors. Like the three who served before them, their lives were devoted in selfless counsel to the sovereign on the obsidian throne, and to the larger Nephilim and Incubi populations that existed in secret alongside mankind in the outside world. The decisions and edicts of the three were intended to keep the ultimate peace, and to ensure harmony and balance between the Nephilim and the Incubi, above all things. Unfortunately, for the mother petitioning the three today on behalf of her daughter, those decisions did not always align with the whims and wishes of everyone who was granted an audience in the high chamber. Nahiri stood motionless at her post as the Nephilim mother attempted to persuade the three to reconsider her request here today. "Your Graces, please, I beseech you. Each generation of my family has been chosen to send one of our daughters to the harem in her 20th year. Why not this time? Why not my daughter? It is an honor we have always accepted most humbly." "As you should," said one of the three, a mild but measured response drifting down from behind the obscuring screen. "Selection is an honor that cannot be requested or petitioned. It is a sacred duty that must be protected and preserved." Although she respected the Nephilim way of life, Nahiri was relieved that as a blade, she was ineligible for the harem. The idea of being sent away to breed with the incubi who visited the pleasure palace made her shudder inwardly. She'd heard enough tales of the incubi's insatiable, unholy appetites and overwhelming sexual power. She'd listened, in appalled fascination, to the stories some of the other blades told in the temple dormitory late at night. Stories they'd heard from Nephilim sisters and cousins on the outside, about all of the things rumored to go on within the silk-draped walls of the harem. Wicked, deviant things that made Nahiri's cheeks flush and sent heat pooling between her legs, even now. Awkwardly, she shifted on the soles of her feet, trying to ignore the unwanted stirrings of her body. As she moved, she felt her long black braids swing against her spine. Her perfect soldier's posture broken, Nahiri winced and hoped no one had noticed. Naturally, someone had. The shifting of her stance caught the attention of the temple blade posted on the other side of the high chamber staircase. The tall blonde Nephilim lifted a pale brow in Nahiri's direction, smugly noting the flaw. Of course, Felina would enjoy seeing Nahiri squirm. The two had been in a silent competition with each other from the moment they both arrived at the temple to train as blades at the age of 18. A decade later, they were still rivals. Felina's stunning beauty won favors from everyone who looked at her, but the blade was also a skilled fighter. though she was not quite as skilled, nor as disciplined as Nahiri. It was that slim difference that had won Nahiri the right side of the high chamber stairs as captain of the Temple Blades, while Valina stood as her second on the left. Even though pride was frowned upon in the temple, Nahiri couldn't help taking more than a little satisfaction in the position she had claimed through hard work and devotion to her duty. Spine erect, expression placid, she stood at attention as the Nephilim mother and her daughter were dismissed by the three and began to take their leave. The pair had barely made it to the arched double doors when the fine hairs on Nahiri's nape started to prickle. A stirring energy was gathering swiftly outside the chamber. The tall door swung open, admitting a startling burst of heat. It shot through the room, carrying with it a metallic punch of ozone that blasted into Nahiri's nostrils. Like the approach of a violent storm, the air turned electric. Then it came alive in the form of a man. A very large, menacing man. Incubus. Nahiri knew it even before the raven-haired demon materialized fully and lifted his dark head. His citrine gaze was narrowed, his stance aggressive, big hands fisted at his sides. Alarm rushed over the room like a flash fire. Nervous whispers and anxious murmurs hissed through the ranks of the other blades. One of the newer trainees let out a shriek. Only the three seemed unmoved by the intrusion. Not that the incubus seemed to notice. Nor did he care. His disregard was plain enough in the way he'd arrived, rudely disrupting the chamber. But his attire added further insult. Instead of dressing appropriately for an appearance on sacred ground, he wore clothing from the outside, from the world of man. Modern, sophisticated clothing that somehow made him seem even more foreign and savage in this place. The coal gray suit he wore outlined every broad line and muscled inch of his body. At his throat, a patch of smooth, tanned skin showed beneath the unbuttoned collar of his crisp white shirt, hinting at lazy days spent under the sun. Decadent, Nahiri thought disapprovingly. It didn't take much to imagine what she guessed to be a pampered, debauched lifestyle of sloth and pointless indulgence. She tried not to imagine anything more about the sex-feeding demon, least of all how he and his kind were gifted with the power to seduce even the most unwilling soul. She felt the depth of that power crackling in the air all around her as the incubus stepped forward, neither waiting for nor seeking permission from the three to approach. Nahiri settled her hands on her weapons as he stalked up the center aisle in arrogant, long-legged strides, his entire demeanor bristling with menace. Yet for all his arrogance and rudeness, he was handsome. She might even have been tempted to call him beautiful, if not for the savage scowl that knit his brow and twisted his full lips into a furious snarl. Even in rage, his face was arresting, brutal and fierce, full of hard angles and unforgiving lines. His was the kind of face that would have told anyone looking at him that he was something more than human. Something long-lived, darkly formidable. Something very dangerous, all the more so because of his enticing, rugged appeal. Judging from the many agog faces of her fellow blades, Felina included, Nahiri had to guess this was one incredibly powerful incubus. Hushed whispers drifted toward her from the other Nephilim. "Isn't that the master of Gravori House? Heavens save us if it is." "You know what they call him, don't you? Devil Gravori." He was nearly to the front of the chamber now. As captain, it was up to Nahiri to meet this oncoming threat and stop it. If need be, she would call every blade in the room to attack. She stepped directly into his path. "Come no farther." To her relief, her warning sounded steady, unrushed. She felt the weight of more than one pair of blade eyes on her as she alone moved in to confront the menace that had taken over the room. The incubus paused, but those ageless golden eyes were fixed on her in question, in piqued challenge. Nahiri didn't like the wicked gleam she saw in his gaze. It did strange things to her breathing, made her already racing heartbeat lunge into a harder tempo. That unsettling citrine stare made her feel examined from the inside out. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if her every fear and doubt and sinful thought were being laid out for his perusal. Worse, it took all her focus to keep from losing herself in his eyes, and the wicked promise that seemed to burn in their depths. She didn't want to imagine what his kind could do to a woman, but it seemed that as soon as she thought it, pictures were already forming vividly, profanely in her mind. She and this man, this demon, twined around each other under the heat of a summer sky. She could practically smell the sun warming his naked, tawny skin. She could almost feel the erotic warmth of him under her fingertips, in her grasp, on her tongue, against every fevered inch of her body. And then it was his fingers roaming over her bare skin, his lips tasting every inch of her, his mouth devouring her with a carnal hunger that threatened to consume her. "Enough!" Nahiri cleared her throat and struggled to rein in her wandering mind. Was he doing that to her deliberately? Did an Incubus Master like him even have to try? He moved to step around her. Nahiri moved too. Chin lifting to meet his arrogant gaze, she closed her fingers around the hilts of her weapons. "Unannounced visitors are not permitted in the temple." She could have the twin 10-inch daggers in her grip and poised for combat in a mere instant. Although she had never used the special blades to inflict harm on anyone, she wouldn't hesitate to use them now. She wouldn't hesitate to kill, if it meant protecting the three. They were her family, as close to family as she'd ever known, that is. Those golden eyes seared her. "I'm not a visitor," he growled, his voice dark and deep and powerful. She felt the vibration of it all the way into her bones. "And since I'm already standing here, consider my presence all the announcement anyone needs." A gasp went up from many of the other blades. No one had ever dared such a flagrant show of disrespect for the temple, nor, more importantly, for the three. Nahiri bristled. She drew one of her long daggers. "You must leave. Now." He glanced at the razor-sharp length of honed obsidian in her hand. One black brow quirked, nearly imperceptibly. Then his face hardened, and the dangerous twist of his mouth turned even more terrifying. He took another step, not so much toward the stairs now, but toward her, into her personal space, until there was hardly a hand's width between them. "You think you can tangle with me, little blade? I won't go down as easily as my brother, I promise you that," he snarled. She didn't know what he was talking about. She didn't know anything in that moment, except the mesmerizing spell of his penetrating gaze and the answering rush of arousal that ran up and down her limbs, making her skin feel too tight, utterly too hot to bear. All of the carnal images and wildly erotic sensations she'd felt a moment ago under his stare intensified now. She saw things, felt things, that her virgin mind struggled to comprehend, even though her untried body seemed eager for the education. Her heart raced. Her breath accelerated into soft, shallow pants as a keen ache began to bloom deep inside her. She moaned at the feeling, powerless to bite back her reaction to this intense need. She couldn't break free of his hold on her. All the worse, she couldn't even summon the will to want to break free. It was unbearable, both the yearning of her body and the humiliation of how effortlessly the incubus would be able to make her his thrall if he wanted. Her fingers began to go lax around her blade, almost to the point of dropping it. No, she wouldn't go down so easily either. Gathering what inner strength she could, Nahiri mentally pushed back at him with all her will. "No!" The ache eased up at once. She was still breathless, her nerve endings still smoldering, but at least she had some control of herself again. As for the demon, Devil Gravori, he cocked his head at her, studying her with more interest than she cared to acknowledge. The luck was there and gone in an instant. Then he swung his head away from her and addressed the three directly. He stalked toward the stairs before Nahiri could stop him. No one stopped him. No one seemed inclined to move against him, not even Velina. Every female face in the room was transfixed on him, not in terror or horror now, but in some small measure of the same boneless compliance that he had inflicted on her. He had enthralled every blade in the room. And now his fury was fixed entirely on the trio of priestesses at the top of the stairs. "I've come here to demand an explanation from the three of you," he said, his voice booming in the heavy silence of the room. "I've come to demand justice for the offense that's been dealt to my family and my house." The silence of the three was staggering. Nahiri waited to hear one of them, any of them, react to the accusation in some way. Had he enthralled the powerful Nephilim priestesses as handily as he owned the rest of the High Chamber? Finally, a voice filtered down from behind the tall screen. "This is an overstep even for you, Devlin Gravori." Devlin, Nahiri silently acknowledged, not Devil. Although she was getting a very good taste for how he might have earned the nickname. "You've been master of your house for many centuries," another of the three said. "Long enough to know that this temple is not a place for violence or accusations. This is a place of peace and mercy, of wisdom and counsel, and we three are merely the balance." "Fuck the three of you," he growled, more savage than ever. "And fuck your precious balance. My brother was killed last night, along with his human thrall. I'm not leaving until I have an answer as to why." He stalked for the stairs leading up to the three, and started taking them two at a time. Panic sent Nahiri into motion. She sped up beside him to head him off midway. Her obsidian blade was gripped lightly, but lethally in her right hand. The second was not even a moment out of reach of her other hand. "Stop," she commanded the powerful Incubus Master. "You have no right." His teeth flashed white behind the furious curl of his lips. "Don't I, little blade?" He slipped his hand into the inside of his suit jacket. Nahiri thought for certain he was about to retrieve a weapon of his own. And in a way, that's exactly what he did. "I found this under my brother's body today." He held out his hand, a length of gleaming black volcanic glass lying across his palm. His tone seethed with barely restrained rage. "Whoever killed him left it behind." It was a broken length of blade. An obsidian blade. The kind of weapon only a Nephilim warrior like Nahiri would carry. Chapter 3. Dev watched the temple blade's expression turn to shock as she looked at the broken length of obsidian in his hand. Smoky dark eyes widened in confusion, in total disbelief. Was she stunned by the killing, or by the idea that he held evidence of it? Dev couldn't be sure. "No," she murmured. A shake of her head sent the rope of her silky black braid swinging like a pendulum behind her lithe body. "No, that's impossible. No one carries a weapon like this. Only a Nephilim blade," Dev agreed. "And no blade would raise her weapon against anyone without the approval of this High Chamber." He swiveled a hard look in the direction of the three. "Or on its direct command." He heard her sharp inhalation, felt her tension ratchet up tighter at his inflammatory charge. "You cannot speak to them that way. It's not done. It's not right." It's not right that my brother is dead, damn it! His sharp...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?